I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest, Teegan Bartos, is a people operations and talent acquisition advisor for scaling startups, an executive resume writer, and job search coach featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and LinkedIn. Teegan works both sides of the hiring equation. She helps startups build recruiting strategies, but she also runs Jolt Your Career, where she helps experienced leaders who've hit a wall, people who used to have momentum but now get crickets. Her message is blunt. It's not about your experience, it's how you're positioned. The leaders landing top roles aren't applying, they're being chosen. Teegan crafts professional brands that make decision makers say, we need this person. She's helped senior vice presidents and COOs who built billion-dollar companies reposition themselves and start landing interviews for roles they've once just dreamed about. Teegan doesn't sugarcoat it. She tells people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Teegan, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. We just heard your bio, Teegan. We are so excited that you are here. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, I think Do Hard Things is kind of a 2025, 2026 anthem for a lot of the people that I work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love the show. It's funny. It started off just like, this idea. And then now we just went into our 5th season. And we're now releasing 2 episodes a week versus 1 because we've had so many guests wanting to get on the show. And we are so happy that you are one of them. I will say, though, the people operations and talent acquisition business is hard, right? I started my career off many years ago in recruiting. And I will say that if I didn't get into recruiting, I wouldn't have been able to do all the other things that I'm in now. So I'd love to hear your origin story and where, how your path really started in people operations and talent acquisition. Let's talk about it. Where'd you come from?
Oh, my path is completely unconventional. So I graduated during recession days. And so the day before I was supposed to start my first job post-college, I got a call saying the role was no more and was jobless. And so I was just like normal people do, right? You start applying to everything, you scramble, you panic. And then I tapped into my network, and one of my fellow classmates from community college said, oh, I'll get you a role here. And I had done an internship there a couple of years back, got a job there, and it was a Department of Labor grant helping individuals who would otherwise struggle to find employment get employment. I was then hit by a semi truck and started working with another Department of Labor grant where I was working more on the employer side, helping again individuals who are difficult to place. Think marketing executive from Sears or technology executive from Motorola back in the day find employment through backdooring through employer relationships. Quit working on Department of Labor grants to make more money, ended up in recruiting, which is, because you've done it, is very much so a sales role. Um, and for integrity issues left and had no backup plan and started JYC. So it started off as a resume writing firm. Eventually, we started doing some consulting works on people operations side. And now for the past 5, 7 years, I've been building out HR and talent acquisition functions for startups from scratch. So it's been a whirlwind. It has definitely been an unconventional path for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's awesome. And glad you got to where you are today. So cool what you're doing. And you work with both scaling startups on hiring strategies and also those experienced leaders. What have you learned from being on both sides that most people miss?
Um, I think it's really hard to be an executive. And I think it's really hard to be a job seeker who's not feeling like they're in demand. And so I think my ability to listen and empathize has increased. And I know that sounds like a silly answer, but when you're building a company from scratch, or if you're an established enterprise, how you structure attracting best in class talent is one of the first early signals of your overarching culture of the organization. And then when you're a job seeker, a lot of the executives that I work with, it's been decades since they've had a look for work and they just stopped thinking about how to position themselves. And so a lot of times as job seekers, we think about, okay, here's what I've done. Here's the results that I got for this past company versus saying, here's my unique value and the type of results that I can get for your company. So a little bit of a double whammy of how do we structure effective cultures within an organization, and as individuals, how do we position ourselves to attract the type of opportunities that will ultimately be the most fulfilling for us? Because getting any job, kind of simple. Getting a job that you really like, a little more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. So we have something very similar, very much in common, that we're both very direct, right? Lexi knows just about me very well. And you like to always say, right, you don't tell people what they want to hear, you tell people what they need to hear. And I appreciate that so much. So let's do it. Let's do a test, right? What's the hard truth right now that you have to tell executives who are struggling in the job market?
What got you here won't get you there. And so, what a lot of executives like to do is replicate what has brought them success in the past. And if that was going to work in this type of job market, it would have already worked. So, how a lot of us get hired is a recruiter finds us and says, "Hey, I think you'd be a great fit for this role." Or somebody that we used to work with taps us on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I want you to come to this new company that I'm at. I'm going to build something that's perfect for you." Or somebody in your current organization is saying, like, tapping you on your shoulder saying, "Hey, I want you to come over to this function and build this out," what have you. When those things aren't working, when you can't count on recruiters, when you can't count on your network, then what do you do?
Right.
And that takes a significant amount of research and effort, but it ultimately pays off in the long run because I work with so many executives who have taken the job that the recruiter said, "Oh, here's more money," or taken the job that somebody that they trust said, "Here's a better opportunity." And they just were going through the motions. They weren't necessarily crafting the role that they want. And when you're in a situation where those options aren't coming to you, then you really have to think about who you are as a leader, what you value, what type of culture you want to be at, and then proactively pitch yourself for those opportunities, making sure you're in the right room. And a lot of executives have never written a resume. They never needed one before, never needed a well written one. But on top of a resume, you also need a digital profile now because with AI sourcing, if the AI sourcers can't find you from your presence, be that a LinkedIn profile or conference speaking appearances or what have you. It's going to be hard to be an obvious choice. And then how are you then presenting yourself through the interview process, where a lot of people will say, yeah, I'll wing it. The expectation now is that that you've read, if it's a publicly held company, that you've read their quarterly reports, that you understand what problems they're solving, whether or not you have a referral and an inside source or not. The expectation is that there's enough public information that you can come well prepared to pitch what you are going to do, what value you are going to be, what steps it is. Like right now, I'm working with a client for a Fortune 100 company, and just through the recruiter screening, he needs a 120-day plan. He also needs his unique value proposition written out, an executive bio, a resume, and that is just what the hiring committee needs to submit himself to the board hiring committee. And he's got 3 days to submit it. If he hadn't worked with us already, it how would you do that in the middle of running a company when you've got to put this stuff together? So a long-winded way of saying what used to work doesn't work, and if you're not prepared, you're not going to get the opportunity because they're going to pass you up. So you don't want to get ready, you want to stay ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said, and especially a part with the researching. And I think that goes into any meeting you take these days. People expect you to come with research with how much we can get so quickly. And I think another thing I've been seeing online is that a lot of executives feel like they're getting reached out by recruiters, but they're roles that are beneath what they feel they should be getting. Why do you think that's happening? And what does that signal about how they're being perceived online?
Yeah, Lexi, I don't know when the last time you looked at executive LinkedIn profiles or if you've ever sourced for executive level candidates. Most people look retired. They have not put any effort into their digital brand whatsoever because back in the day, executive leaders were untouchable. They had corporate executive communications teams putting things out, quotes out on their behalf with news or newspapers, but not necessarily their profile that they've cultivated. And that's just not working right now. We have to have some type of a digital presence that says where we're at today, not just talking about what we've done in the past. Because if the last time you've updated your LinkedIn profile was a decade ago, we can't expect recruiters to be reaching out to us for what we're capable of doing today. So a lot of it is just a miss of positioning. Um, and then also who you're connected to. And so if you are someone who's put some thought into your LinkedIn profile, are you engaging with the caliber of talent that you want to be recognized as? And that can be a little tricky, especially if you're on a confidential search, but there's ways to do it where you're positioning yourself as more of a thought leader or positioning your current organization to attract best in class talent versus looking like I'm desperately looking for a job or something shady might be going on here. Some of the easiest ways to do it is just go to industry events and be on a speaking panel or be involved in industry related organizations and whatnot, volunteering your time on a board that you care about. There's so many creative ways to do it without signaling I'm looking, but signaling I am at this level of talent. And we also can't control lazy recruiters, so we can't avoid it completely.
Right, right. So, I mean, again, you've already unpacked it a little bit, right? Your core message really is not your experience; it's your how you're positioning it. And you're talking about positioning right now, but I love stories, and I know there's a couple that of course, in your your bag. You helped. Let's talk about this one. You helped a COO
Mhm.
who really helped two startups go to billions with a B dollars in revenue, but they were struggling to find a role. So it was a positioning problem, is what you were saying in the story. So walk us through, how did you fix that? Take us through that example.
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite clients. So if you're listening right now, still adore you. Uh, Such an amazing person, and he's local to my community. He's very involved in the community on different industry boards and different philanthropic boards that he cared deeply about. Had great success in the past. He had been interviewing like crazy, but he hadn't been getting a final offer. And so he's like, Tegan, we got to do something. And it was just slight tweaks that ultimately ended up being what gave him the offer. And he told his origin story. He's in manufacturing, and he shared his story about starting off on the shop floor, not being educated, his employer putting him through school, how it took a decade to get his MBA, and how he worked up through big Fortune 100 companies and eventually pivot over to the startup world to help their manufacturing be successful. And it was his genuine, authentic story of showing how where he started to where he went that ultimately got him this offer at this organization. And the recruiter was really transparent. He said, we've been searching for someone for over a year for this role. The board has not moved anybody forward. And this board member was willing to serve in that CEO role until he found somebody who believed could do the job better than him. That board member started off on the shop floor and worked his way up into the board seat 40 years later. And so that story really resonated. And this person in particular in this story, when you're competing at the executive level, everyone is qualified. What separates you is who you genuinely are. And so for some companies, you coming in and, having an Ivy League pedigree, it may not be conducive to that organization, or it may be perfect. In this case, they wanted those grassroots, the humble beginnings, so he could relate and keep the culture that this what was once a family owned business turned public company was wanting to preserve, even though they now had a fiduciary responsibility to their stakeholders. And every single client that I work with, there's a different strategy involved. So that may not be the best strategy for someone else. But when you can build that relationship with the recruiters, get that additional insight, you can tailor your story and how you present yourself in a way that's truthful and with integrity to ultimately seal the deal. And what I see a lot of people doing is we want to come as polished as possible. Sometimes letting our guard down actually makes us more likable.
Yeah, definitely really like that. And that kind of me into my next thought. Do you think building an online presence, personal brand on LinkedIn is more, less, or as important as having an impressive resume?
I think it's more important because I think our network is our net worth. And so for the people that for the people that I work with, whether they're a startup founder or whether they're a job seeker, they they don't only want to look good on paper. They genuinely want to have a legacy. They want to be the type of leader that is impacting their organization, that's impacting their broader communities. And without people knowing about what you're doing, it's really hard to have a ripple effect with what you're doing. The more you can influence others and the more credibility you have in your industry, not just your company, truly makes a difference about what type of opportunities that you can get and that you can get for your people.
So let's double down on LinkedIn. If you can pull out maybe one, two, three hacks that you can share on LinkedIn, don't give everything away because we want people to reach out to you. But a couple of hacks. I'll give you an example. I see people, being, two sides to this story about putting open to work on your profile picture. Like, is that a positive thing or is that a negative thing? Should people be sending video notes and voice notes and DMs after they do an interview? Like, what are some of those hacks you recommend to people on LinkedIn specifically?
So if you're on an active job search, whether you need it to be confidential or if you've recently been let go, I think that being active to a certain extent will compound. And so whether or not you use the green banner or not, I don't really care. I will say that there's algorithm benefits to announcing that you're open to work for the first 24 hours that you turn it on and write the post. After that, a lot of my executive clients who are actively looking because their role was impacted for some reason will typically turn it off to reduce how many scammers that they get, because you do get a lot of noise on LinkedIn with that green banner on. But I think it's a personal choice. As a executive recruiter, I don't care if it's on or off. Um, I have worked with hiring leaders who think people who are currently unemployed are less desirable than somebody who is employed. And that is a bias that we just have to know is out there. Um, but I think that leveraging LinkedIn as a networking platform is really smart. And so the first thing that you do when you're on a job search, a strategic job search, is identify target companies. Like, where would you love to work? Where would your personality, your leadership style, the type of impact that you want to make have the biggest payoff? Well, start following those companies, start connecting with people who work at those companies, start tapping into your network who knows people at those companies so you can increase the chances of recruiters. I know you're going to hate me for saying this, but so you can increase the chances of bypassing the recruiter and going straight to the hiring leaders to either fill an active role or have a role be built for you. And that happens all the time on LinkedIn. So networking, s- huge, use it to find people. It's the easiest place to find people because they're tied to their company. The second thing I would do is to maybe post once, depending off if you're unemployed, twice a week, because the more you talk about what you do, the easier it is to have some type of a portfolio of the way that you think. And in all the executive hiring committees that I'm involved with in right now, and like the client that I was telling you about earlier, who has to put together a 120-day plan for starting in this new role, that's exactly what they're looking for: is how do you think? They know you're qualified, but how do you think? And if you don't want to post, finding other people who are talking about things, Harvard Business Reviews or industry titans, what have you. Leaving thoughtful comments, even if it's just once or twice a week, can be huge. I've got a client who is pivoting into the private equity space, and he is been bombarded by interviews January and now February because he's being active with the things that they are doing, leaving thoughtful comments. I think that leaving voice notes in someone's DMs is a way to elevate that further, because then you don't feel like it's a script, a copy and paste script. So those voice notes, I do see higher conversions, but personally, I hate voice notes because I have to be able to listen to them. And I'm on calls all day long, so I don't just have unlimited time to listen to voice notes. It'll take me a week before I can go back and listen to voice notes. So there's also some risk there, especially when you're targeting busy executives. Um, so networking, thought leadership, two biggest perks to LinkedIn. The third, and I'll leave it at that, is just the way that you position yourself. The words that you choose to represent yourself matter, and then people then use them to talk about you. And with advances in AI sourcing tools, they're going to look at your profile, the words that you use on your profile, use those same exact words to then write a blurb about you, advocating for why you would be a good fit for this confidential role that some executive recruiter is sourcing for. And so that helps, because if you've put thought into it, then these tools and or human beings are more likely to articulate you in a way that you would like them to articulate, versus saying, yeah, he did operations for cop 2 manufacturing company, or used to work at Amazon and before that worked at Accenture. That's not the way you want somebody articulating you. So if you take control of it, it's so much easier for them to use the exact words that you chose. So those are my top 3.
I love that, and those are incredible tips. And something I saw you say on LinkedIn is The best jobs aren't posted, they're filled before they hit the market. How do you position yourself to get that hidden opportunity? Does that tie into like what you said about the recruiters creating a position for you?
Sometimes, I have a lot of clients that will have roles be created for them just because of the value that they can bring. Or maybe an organization had one role set that they were actively looking for, and then a client come in and interview, and then they realize that their potential is so much more, so we'll modify the role. For me, I don't post my roles online when I'm working with my clients, when I'm recruiting. I source talent, and I do that by looking through profiles, looking at where somebody used to work, looking at job titles, looking at location, all those different criterias that would make it likely for this person to be a good fit for this role. Anybody who's ever been in the hiring space, hiring leaders will know people who come from this company, they don't work out here. They have the highest retention or the highest turnover rates. But people who come from this company, this company, or this company, they actually end up working out here because we're more entrepreneurial than that company, what have you. And so um a lot of times executive level roles won't be posted because the person in the role can't know that they're being let go because it'll be too disruptive to the market or could impact company valuations, because anytime there's turnover in a high profile position, it can cause some disruption in the organization. So they like to have the replacement ready when the layoff occurs. Or it can happen because when you post a role online, 90% of the people who apply aren't qualified. So it's a waste of time to post a role. So you strategically source so you can get better qualified people. And at the executive level, a lot of executive recruitment is sales. How do I get this person to leave the company that they feel comfortable with, especially in a job market like this, where people aren't wanting to leave their roles because of how much uncertainty there is in the market. So, how do I sell them that this is a better opportunity, that there is stability, that there is room for growth, and making sure it truly is a win win? Because if I don't know this person as an executive recruiter, I need to get to know them first before I know if they would actually be a good fit. And maybe they're not a good fit for this role, but maybe they'll be a good fit for another role. So, in the world of executive recruitment, a lot of times roles aren't posted because there's so much of a relationship that occurs beforehand versus taking a gamble on a role that is so crucial to the organization.
This is amazing stuff. So we talked about where to find roles. We talked about how to make your LinkedIn look good. We talked about how to position yourself. We talked about how to do the research and strategically go after jobs. We talked about really all the things up to the interview. But a lot of these executives, I mean, it's 2026, COVID was just 6 years ago. A lot of these executives who may be looking right now, the last time they did their first interview, they had to worry about, what cologne they wore, whether their shoes shined, was my hair done? Those things. I mean, I have literally flip flops on right now. I'm in a North Face hoodie and I'm at my house. So most first interviews these days, even at the executive level, are done virtually, right? And some people are not ready for that, and they're not thinking through like, hey, instead of my shoes being shiny, I need to make sure my audio sounds good, right? And so like, what is that first interview prep? And it doesn't have to be as technical as I was making it. I mean, just generally, should I be role playing? What do I need to do to come to the table prepared and stand out from the rest of the noise that's out there? So what does that look like, and how do you help people?
I will say that executive presence does need to come through the screen. And so having good lighting, having a quality mic, having a space that feels the level that you're coming in at is important. And from a bias standpoint, that's really difficult because in some cultures, there's a home with multiple generations and there isn't a dedicated office. So as Americans, we're really spoiled in that a lot of people do have private home offices that are designed. Um, so if you are in a position to have a dedicated space, think about those things, the lighting, the quality of the mic, and what you have in the background. Um, For a woman, I'd probably say, hey, take your kid's picture out of the back. Maybe elevate the books and whatnot to make yourself have that type of executive essence that they would be expecting. Um, I don't care. I try not to care, I should say. But I have noticed where some people will come on in an interview. I was interviewing for a project manager recently, and in the background, the bed was unmade and the bookshelf just had stuff everywhere. There was like a bowl of cereal, and you could see the little bits of cereal that were still on top of the milk that just hadn't got put in the fridge or put in the sink. And it's hard not to think, wow, if the space that you were interviewing is that messy and your job as a project manager is to stay organized, it's hard not to think, would you be able to be organized in your role if you're not organized in your space? And so that bias can come up. Um, and when we are at the executive level in particular, interviewing virtually, it's important because most of us are going to have global teams and we want to be able to interact with that and we want to be able to create those relationships virtually. And the first signal of that is, can you do that via the interview? And so it is worth thinking about and investing just a little bit in, even if it's just blurring your background, which I don't really recommend. But even if it's just putting yourself in a corner, a quiet corner with good lighting, it can make a difference in your first appearance because we do have those subconscious bias that will trigger different reactions, like in the case of like the dirty cereal and unmade bed.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I remember when I was starting here, I had shadowed Gabe on an interview, and the first thing I noticed was that the bed was unmade in the back, and I was like, "That's so interesting to get on an interview, like, that's such an easy thing that you can do," but definitely agree there. And I think a lot of people get uncomfortable or stressed out about having negotiation conversations on their interviews. And you obviously help people get stronger there. What do you think the most common mistakes people are making, senior leaders, when negotiating?
I think the biggest mistake people are making at the senior leadership level is not being willing to talk about compensation expectations at all. People think that they're playing hardball, but they're not giving any type of insights to the team who genuinely wants to create a win-win situation. Like at the end of the day, my client's budget or my client's budget for the right person, I know my clients will have some flexibility there, but in certain cases they won't always have that flexibility. And going through what can sometimes be 7 rounds of interviews just to get to the very end to see that there's no alignment on comp is a waste of everyone's time. And so I really do think it's better for someone to have some type of a ballpark range and then see if there's alignment and then move forward from there so no one's time is being wasted. Something else that I see is I've worked with a couple of companies who give really competitive offers first time around. And then someone will come back and ask for like $50,000 more. And the offer was already above the range that they had provided in the first round interview, and the scope was really transparent, but they just felt like they needed to go harder because they don't want to leave money on the table when that client already had paid transparency as a part of their culture on not wanting anybody in the particular company that I'm thinking of. Every single executive's compensation package is public knowledge because they want no one to be worried about if they're being paid fairly. So, in that case, the person almost felt greedy because they knew that that was a part of the culture and still went really hard afterwards. Another thing that I see more so in women than men is significantly underselling themselves. We have so many different compensation tools. Like Randstad, for example, is a staffing agency who will come out with salary reports and it's free. You can just put in your email and they'll email it to you based on the millions of roles that Randstad fills. It will show what it is. salary.com, payscale.com. Some of them you have to pay for, but a lot of them are free. And with how many in the United States, at least, with how many states have pay transparency where you legally have to put some type of comp on there, there isn't really a reason for us to be underselling ourselves now. If we know that the company size, the location, the scope is pretty similar, we should feel confident in saying, here's what I want. The reason why this is so important at the senior leadership level is it's going to be expected that you can have difficult conversations. Because if you can't have a difficult conversation like compensation, then how are you going to address somebody coming into work drunk or somebody not performing well, or for a client who's disrespecting your team and impacting morale when you need to come in and step up and be an advocate and give your team air coverage? If you can't have a compensation conversation, how are you going to have the more difficult conversations? So I feel like a conversation should be had. And I know not everybody agrees with that, but that's my personal opinion.
Well, I agree with it. So you got one fan. Um, this is my last question. I know Lexi has one as well, but talking about difficult conversations and talking about the balancing act, and again, especially with executives, right? Because to your point earlier, like if they're not gonna be able to handle this, how are they going to handle that? Well, a lot of executives come to the table with a very healthy self ego, right? I don't want to push the words too much, but some of them are arrogant and some of them are pretty cocky and they got big chips on their shoulders. And most of it, I'm sure, is rightfully so because they've been wildly successful in previous careers. But now we're, starting to sell themselves again. And when they are having the ability or they need the ability to really balance that, where it's I'm showing you my success and showing you my value and showing my worth, but also not coming across like you're an arrogant jerk. So where is that, baked in on trying to balance that, and how do you help your executive candidates do so?
I feel really blessed to have worked with some incredible people. I think so I started doing this since 2017 out on my own with JYC. And I've only had 2 clients for hell. And I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of people. So I feel like my odds are pretty good that I've worked with a lot of incredible people. And what I see in them is curiosity. And so, yes, they stick to the facts and they're able to articulate the way that they've created value in previous conversations. And they're really enthusiastic about what they could do in the future for this next organization. But they do so in a way that's curious. Have you tried this before? Is that in alignment with the board's goals? And they ask a lot of questions and listen for certain signals, because when you listen to what's not being said, you can gather a lot of intel. So, is there too much red tape? Is there some politics going on that's not being said? Is there a toxic leader in the equation and that's what's having to be fixed? Is this team underperforming because why? And so when my clients are interviewing and they remain curious and ask really strong questions and make the interviews more conversational, they can gather enough information to be able to present themselves in a consultative way that has them providing value before they're even hired. And that is just innate in their leadership styles. I have had people come in that are more arrogant who have very quickly found that that's not always attractive, and not other organizations don't find that appealing, and have the very sobering reality that maybe they didn't have that internal growth because they were lacking that EQ. And that's a different coaching session above and beyond interview prep. And I've had to have them. Um, and sometimes a piece of humble pie is just what we need, because we don't have all of the answers coming in from the outside. We have to respect what they've built and bring people along with us and collaborate, versus it's my way or the highway. No one wants that. That just I don't even think that type of egotistical person would want somebody coming in and treating them like that. But narcissists exist, so we just won't hire those people.
Exactly.
So if someone's listening right now, they're feeling stuck, they're getting ignored online, they're undervalued, and they're only hearing about roles that they don't want, what's the first thing they should do to turn it around?
I would take a deep look at who they are and what value they bring to the market and really map that out and then update their branding materials, their LinkedIn profile, their resume, and how they're articulating themselves in conversations with friends, families, even recruiters, right? And then once they have the new way of talking about themselves down, then have a refresh. Start back at square one and work your way out again with the new way of talking about yourself because people don't remember as much as you think they might. So it's okay to say, I've gotten a little bit more clarity since we last chatted, and then move on from there. Because if you are not getting attention in this market, it's one of two things. It's how you're positioning yourself or how you're going about your job search strategy. But I would always start with positioning first and then look at strategy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tegan, for joining us on the show. We are so excited that you're here. Ton of information. We can't wait for our audience to hear it. What's the best way for everyone to reach out to you, and who would be the right person to do so?
Yeah, so if you are looking to make some type of a career move, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a link where you can get time on my calendar directly on there. So you don't even have to message me. You can just throw time on my calendar and we can chat about your goals to see if I would be a good resource for you. If you're in a position where you've been on the job market for quite some time, my website has tons of free resources that you can download at your leisure. And hey, if you are looking to get out of corporate and start your own company, I would be happy to help you build the type of culture you'd like. Shameless plug there.
Thank you so much, Tegan. And I know you have an amazing following on LinkedIn, so we'll put all your links as well on the show. We appreciate you. And everyone listening, keep doing the hard things. And Lexi and I will see you on the next one.